Yes. So, welcome everyone to this interview with a beloved Type 3 Josh, who's been passionate about the Enneagram and teaching it and learning from it. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Michael Naylor, and I teach out of South Portland, Maine. And I've been involved in the Enneagram for many, many years, and just found that getting to do interviews is just a delight for me because I always learn something new. And so that said, just want to welcome you, Josh, and thank you for being here. It's great to have you and be with you. And so, wanted to just start with, maybe how you got turned on to the Enneagram and how that has progressed, and then go to the agony and the ecstasy of the joy and difficulty of transformation, and we'll probably cover the whole gamut. So anyway, just trust your intuition.
Sure. Well, good to be with you.
You too.
Yeah. So I've been studying the Enneagram for about a little over 6, maybe 7 years now. And how it started was, well, I took a workshop on the recommendation from a friend. I was living in St. Louis at the time. I was working at a piano bar, which, by the way, that might be interesting to go into as part of the whole 3 thing. But a friend recommended this workshop on the Enneagram, and I was in a job that was my first job where I was a manager of other people, and I thought, oh great, personality types, this will make me a better manager. And so I went and took this 3-day immersive weekend workshop, and it had a really profound impact on me, to the point that it kind of it changed my whole life, that workshop. I'm sensing sort of how much do you want me to go into? There's go ahead.
Yeah, so just follow your thread, and if you if it appears that you're going too far afield, which I doubt will happen, I would just say, well, I'll ask a question to sort of narrow it down. So, what would you like to say about it?
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll just tell the story of how I became a piano player, and then how that
Cool.
led me to the Enneagram. So I was born and raised in Houston, in a mostly Reformed Jewish family. Went to private school, went to Princeton, and then moved back home after Princeton and was a physics teacher, and I was tutoring the SATs. Princeton as a whole, also Type 3 experience for me. It's as you might imagine, it was a place of lots of incredible joy and experiences, and I made very powerful and wonderful relationships, and also it was very hard, because it was a place where, for the first time, and this is sort of stereotypical almost of Ivy League students, but for the first time, I had to come face to face with my own averageness with respect to my peers. Or put it this way, there's always someone better at something that I wanted to do than I was. And I wanted to do it all. I wanted to do it all at Princeton. I wanted to do the hardest possible physics classes and the hardest math classes. And I also wanted to be in a dance company, which I was, in an a cappella group, and do theater, and also be like a big, social butterfly on campus, and be loved by everybody, and go out drinking every night, and all these kinds of things. And it was just too much. And it eroded me. And and I ended up having to take a year off, got really depressed. And then anyway, came back to print. That's a whole thing we could go into if we wanted to. But yeah, so here I was, having graduated back home, and was sleeping in the same bedroom I had slept in as a kid and tutoring the SATs, which I didn't like anyway when I was taking them in the first place. And I felt that the whole thing was kind of stupid because I was like, I won the society game. I went to Princeton, I graduated, and they tell you the world's your oyster. And then I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I found myself tutoring just because it was a job that was sort of easy to get. And I went through a really big existential crisis, which visit me often, I would say. Yeah. And as a result of that, I realized that I had never really done anything for myself. I'd always been jumping through the hoops that other people or my culture had put in front of me.
Yeah.
And the word authenticity had become really important to me. This is before I knew the Enneagram. But I was sort of obsessed with it, becoming authentic. And I had this insight at a Lady Gaga concert, actually, that I was going to become a piano player. And I came home from the concert, and I told my mom I was going to be a piano player. She was like, "Sure, okay, honey, that's fine." Oh, I didn't know how to play the piano. Is the other thing. But I'd been a singer my whole life.
Oh.
So anyway, I did. I got a teacher, and I learned some songs from YouTube. And I had already been tinkering a little bit on the piano for a few months, maybe up to a year, but I really substantially dove in, and then auditioned for a piano bar, and then became a dueling piano player at a piano bar called Howl at the Moon. And that was my job for like 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was like, it was a kind of, first of all, I was obsessed with it. And I was, what it meant to me wasn't just sort of piano playing and music, although that was cool. It was a revolution in selfhood. It was the, as I said, it was the first thing, kind of a stake in the ground. Like, I'm a bit of a middle finger to the rest of, society's expectations. That I felt I had to launch a kind of inner rebellion against it in order to be myself.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I did, and I played for years, and then in Houston, and then Howl at the Moon is a big organization. At the time, they had locations everywhere in the United States, and so I went Houston to Kansas City to St. Louis, and in St. Louis, I was the entertainment director, and that's how I found. And then, anyway, so that's how I found myself in St. Louis, and then a friend said, take the Enneagram class, and I did. And when I learned about the Type 3, as you might imagine, with that as a prelude, reading the chapter on Type 3 was sort of like it was jaw-dropping. I couldn't believe it, that it was so precise. And it revealed things in such plain language that I couldn't look away. And yeah, as I was mentioning to you, it just really drew me in, and then that became my new obsession. And so so then I took as many workshops as I could, including some with you, and read as much as I could about it. And anyway, here I am now 6 years later, or 7 years later, or something like that, and teaching it and coaching people.
Yeah, awesome. Well, beautiful. Sounds like a 3 journey for sure. And when you were learning about the type, what were some of the attributes that stood out when you went, "Oh yeah, that's me. Oh yeah, that's me"? I mean, what grabbed your attention?
Yeah. The first one, and this is the hard one, is the gut punch, was the deceptiveness of the 3. And we talk about deception in the type 3 as self-deception, and rightly so. But in the average and unhealthy levels, it also can be deception of others and of this whole image projection, image management thing. And I had this whole thing around lying, and I had a history of sort of cheating in some of my academic work, which I had to process. That was a whole journey of 6 years of therapy to get that one. And which I say jokingly, but it was like harrowing. And I'll just give you an example. I remember in high school, this is a story I've told a lot about myself as a 3. I think it's really indicative. I remember going to a friend's house that I'd been to many times before, and I was on the phone with another friend. And the drive was supposed to take me about 15 minutes, but I was on the phone for 45 and circling just in my car, the neighborhood of this person's house, because I wanted to be there for my friend, and we were having a conversation, and I didn't want to hang up or interrupt the phone call. So hung up and then parked in the driveway and went in. And then my friend, who's been waiting for me, where are you? Where have you been? And I was like, oh, I got lost. He was like, what? It's like, and then, so anyway, so I found myself lying about it. And that's just one example. And it's ridiculous too. It was a ridiculous lie, sort of obvious to see through. But that was a pattern, I would say. That was just a thing I had been doing. And it was in the service of, I don't know, not offending the person or smoothing things over. I didn't want to let the person know I was on the phone with another friend. I didn't want them to anyway, so that's as an example. So I remember coming to terms with the fact that I had this pattern of white lying, just kind of toss them out easily,
Well, as some other 3s have said, my lips would start moving before I even realized I was, concocting a story, and it happened so quick that it would be out the door, and I'd go, wow, I did it again, especially when I started to try to be more conscious of it. They would say, in the back of my head, there was a voice saying, don't say that, but something else just kept, sort of creating the image of the moment that allowed them to feel okay or good or successful. So they said it took a long time to become conscious of it when they were doing it in the moment. What was true for you?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'll give you one other example, and a strategy that I've started to employ that's really useful. So in my first Enneagram class, we were on a break, and it was like 2 minutes before the end of the break, and I was sitting next to this woman this like awesome woman named Jan, who was a type 1. And we had just been talking about a movie called The Imitation Game, which is about Alan Turing, the sort of inventor of modern computing. And we had just been talking about the type 8, and we were about to turn back to class, and she goes, oh, he must be a type 8. That makes so much sense. And I go, oh yeah, sure. She's like, yeah, from the Imitation Game, right? And I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. And then boom, we turned back to class. And there were a couple things wrong with what I had said. First is that I hadn't seen the movie. And two, I knew who Alan Turing was and knew for sure that he was a 5, and disagreed with her.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to come across like I hadn't seen this movie. Of course, I've seen the most important movie that you would think is important to have seen. And maybe this is the disintegration tonight. Like I didn't want to just burst her bubble, by disagreeing with her.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, so over the course of a lot of these classes that I was a part of, I started doing this thing habitually, which is taking a lot of time before, after someone stops speaking and then it's my turn, I've started just really taking a big pause, and almost an uncomfortable one I found for some people. And it used to be really long. It's a little shorter now, but there was like it was this practice that and it wasn't even that conscious. It was almost just this thing that started coming for me, was just needing to tune into myself to, so that when I did start speaking, it was truth.
Mm-hmm.
And, I noticed myself doing it. And it's so funny, just to put this here too, is in the context of a recorded call, I find myself doing that more than I normally would. I do it in a lot of conversations, but even just at the beginning of this call, I'm starting to sort of feel a little bit more, I don't know, coming out of my shell at this point in the conversation. But in the beginning, like as soon as you put the recording button on, it was like, all right, here we go. Like, and then it's not so much that I guess the mask comes on, but it's more like my inner experience of it is like, okay, this is the thing that's going to be out there. And here I am trying to represent myself well. And I'm a coach and I'm an Enneagram teacher. And and who knows who sees this. And I want to be a good conduit of this sensibility that we're caring about in our work. And so I want to be a good example. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to just come out of the gates like a stereotypical sort of, bright and shining, here I am kind of 3.
Yeah. Awesome.
Even though, that impulse is in me in some way, but I find myself just being slow out of the gate and then eventually kind of coming out.
Yeah.
These days.
Yeah. So there's like a work in progress as we're talking here, and and so awesome. And if you decide to go into full mode type 3 and shine, that's okay. You can just say, that's what I do. That's how I roll sometimes. It's all good. But I appreciate those distinctions. So it's interesting, and I wonder if this is true for you. Is a lot of times 3s as little kids will say that there was just this really strong need I had to, please my mom or dad or someone to come out, and they would cheer me and say, that's awesome, you're great. And that sometimes that maybe it's the passion to be the best or to be the shining one or whatever, but that it was like, it would only last for a day and then I'd have to go do it again the next day. It's almost like whatever the achievement was that got me the applause or the appreciation, that it would kind of not rest in my body and stay there. And I'd have to I got to go do this again. And so that they found themselves kind of on this treadmill of the next success or the next accomplishment. And so, when you were a little guy, were you aware of that? Or, how have you noticed that kind of 3-ish engine to be the best or to show up bright and shining in whatever way? Anything come to mind for you? And with that big question?
A lot. It's funny, as I've reflected on my early childhood, and I have a big old 4-wing. And so it could be that this is what's coming, but I certainly remember moments of joy and love and belonging with my family and friends and these kinds of things. But by far the most dominant flavor of my memory is, and then this, thing happened at school where I forgot my homework and my teacher said, oh, well, but everyone else remembered their homework. What happened to, and there I am crying. It used to be that it was a good day at school if I didn't cry.
Yeah.
I was a very sensitive kid.
Yeah.
And I'm still very sensitive. My sensitivity is like, it still surprises me. I'm like, and it's so funny. It's like, I'm a very sensitive person. And
Hmm.
Yeah, your question is bringing up a lot. It's like, so remind me, just the essence of your question was like this a hungry ghost aspect of getting, I don't know, a pat on the back or something like that for a job well done or a performance, and then it not lasting, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, and
yeah, and then changing that. Yeah,
have to do it again. It's like it doesn't have sticking power. It's like it's there, and then I wake up, and yesterday's success doesn't reach me, and I got to go do it again. It's something along those lines. And I know there's a lot. I just wonder if you had, because I think about it juxtaposition with sort of the essence wound that we talk about, where I lose contact with essence, and I feel like there's nothing valuable in me. I can't sense my preciousness. And so as a little one, as a 3, I can sort of make contact with it by succeeding, but it doesn't really fit the deeper issue of really landing in my preciousness. So I just wondered how you navigated that as a little guy or through teenage, or, what's been your felt experience of dealing with a sort of empty, I'm nothing, I'm don't have value. And then of course the opposite side is I'm so valuable, even God cheers me. So, going between the high and low of that. So anything come up for you about that?
yeah. I mean, only this is my life. I, so I'm just taking a moment.
Yeah, take your time.
Um, I can certainly think of moments of my life when, if I look at, for instance, the dimension of a year, and you just like take the timeline of my life and you're like, all right, what about, from 17 to 18, what was that like? I can certainly find little moments where it was like for instance, I was, like many 3s, on the basketball team and soccer team, and I did theater and, all kinds of things. And
Yeah.
high school I went to a very small high school, 39 kids in my graduating class. And by the way, we were the first graduating class. So there was only ninth grade when I was in ninth grade, and then there was ninth and 10th.
Oh.
And in that school, you didn't try out for the basketball team, you just walked on it. And then you were, there was no, they were like, oh my God, thank you for being here. But I found myself starting on the basketball team and the soccer team and the baseball team and being the president of the math club and the National Honor Society and doing well on my SATs and being the star of the theater productions and things like that. And there was a sense in high school of kind of just like the skating loveliness of being good at stuff.
Yeah.
and
yeah.
And there were moments to your question, to answer your question in a pointed way. I mean, like for instance, I remember after a performance of, say, a musical, where here's an example. I was Pippin in Pippin in 11th grade, and I remember people thought I was really good, and I got lots of praise and accolades and stuff. And then afterwards, of course, a week or two later, then it was done. And it was like, okay, well, that was a nice thing. And then on to the next whatever performance. But in a way, I'm almost self-conscious of reporting this, but it was kind of like there was an abundance of things that I was good at and getting praised for in that very small environment. And so I didn't have to sink into the emptiness
Yeah.
of, the absence of validation for very long.
Yeah.
At least in high school. Once I got there, I mean, elementary school, a whole different experience. I mean, all of my trauma I can basically trace to elementary school. But yeah, then, if you take the whole epoch of high school and then compare it to the epoch of college, then boom, there I was in college. And it was like, I thought I could do the same thing I did in high school. I thought I could be sort of effortlessly good at all this stuff and sort of, show up to class when I want to and do a bunch of, hanging out with friends and be in all these performances and sports teams and whatever. And then I started getting, my first B's on things, B's and it was horrifying. It was devastating. It was absolutely devastating, to the point where I got so depressed I had to withdraw. So, and I really got to the point where I was so desperate for, the approval of my professors that, there were days I was in my room sophomore year looking at a paper that I got a B+ on and just crying for hours.
Yeah. And when you were in that moment of sadness, was it feeling like you had let yourself down or you had failed, or what was the sadness?
It was the feeling that it was the terror of thinking, of confronting the reality, the possibility that I couldn't get an A, that I couldn't do it, that I wasn't as worthwhile, as good at this as there were other people were getting A's, and I somehow couldn't. That meant that I was, not to be Enneagram cliche about it, but it meant that I was worthless. And that was the word that I was using without knowing Enneagram. I'll give you an example. I had a phone call. Oh God, this is a real low moment. With my girlfriend at the time, who, was doing her best to support me. I was very isolated. Anyway, I was really struggling, and she made a list of 63 adjectives of things that she loved about me.
Wow. That's awesome.
Quite amazing. It was an amazing thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there we were on a 2-hour phone call, and she went through each one. Wow. And it was amazing. And at the end, I was so devastated because, and I told her these words actually came out of my mouth. You didn't say brilliant.
You got to prep people, I'm telling you. If you don't say brilliant, none of it counts.
But I mean, I laugh. I'm so grateful I can laugh about this now, because it was so it was so dark. But it's like, I was terrified that I wasn't smart enough or good enough to belong, to be a Princetonian, to be and by the way, and I guess I'll go ahead and say this on recorded sort of YouTube, is I had a history of cheating sometimes in my academic work, and there was an honor system, and that was a thing that I didn't tell a soul until my first Enneagram class. And so there was also that, which any psychologist listening can have a field day with it. It's like I didn't tell anybody, wasn't acknowledging it myself, the shadow of that was operating. And so, anyway, I guess part of the recovery around this whole thing was confronting the, not just looking in the face, the reality that maybe it's true that I couldn't do it, that maybe it's true. But the lost potential this thing, I feel that, I think threes are one of the types that get stereotyped a lot, as kind of, and in some ways it's fair being overachievers and stuff, but the sense of, I have infinite potential. If I just work hard enough, then I can do it. And the terror was, well, I did work hard on this paper and I didn't get an A.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so what does that mean about me? And, yeah. And then of course, afterwards, the remorse of, well, how do I put it? Having wasted an opportunity to really dig in and actually really see if I could prove myself because of the dishonesty around some of my academic work. Like I didn't actually give it a shot. I didn't actually give myself the opportunity to prove what I could do to myself, for myself.
Yeah. Well, so when I've listened, for instance, like this is a far cry from your humble mistruths. When I think of Lance Armstrong, and I don't know if you ever saw the interview he did with Oprah, and it was so clear that there was always a good reason for why he lied in public about the fact that he was doping, and it was like I couldn't sense that there was a desperation behind it to be the successful one, to be the Tour de France, and getting underneath that would probably be painful, because it seems like it's often generated by, if I'm not the star, then it's sort of all or none. I'm a star or I'm worthless, and if I'm worthless, I'm not wanted or I'm not loved. I mean, so how have you worked with reconciling that today? I mean, that's not an easy question to answer, but seems like what do you, I mean, the problem with patterns is they're almost immortal, right? They find another way in, right? So when you think you've got a pattern handled, it like creeps back in, and then you start seeing out of its eyes again. So I just wonder, for you, that recognizing, oh, I was dishonest, and sounds like that came from a place of desperation, or I don't want to be looked at as worthless. So, do what I need to do in the moment, which I'm sure not only threes do that, but a lot of people. But I'm not really sure where this is going. Do you have an answer to any of that? It's a little convoluted. I apologize.
No, it's okay. Yeah. So, well, the recovery itself was various forms of therapy. It was cognitive behavioral therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the work of Byron Katie actually was really helpful in this.
Awesome.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, I'm not sure. Yeah, just being in a community of people who I was being honest with this, about, and who still loved me, and who could support me through the grieving process around this whole thing.
Mm.
I learned a few things in reflection. One is, I'm going to amend something I said a minute ago, which was this idea: I worked hard on this and I still didn't get an A. Part of the thing was actually, well, no, in certain instances, yeah, you worked hard and that was the best you could do. And reframing, well, school isn't about performing; it's about learning. That was a big one.
Mm.
And so just in my life now, taking a learning approach to life as opposed to a performing approach.
Awesome. Yeah, great reframe. Yeah.
Another is yeah, acknowledging, really being on, honesty. Like, did I really give my best at this? Like,
Mhm.
did I really? Um,
Mhm.
what does it mean to really show up and give my best at something?
Mhm.
Um, that's a whole thing too.
Mhm.
I guess, yeah, go ahead.
Well, so, uh, we talked last week, you had mentioned that beautiful type 3 passion to be the best at everything that I do, so that sense of that drive to be the best, which isn't a bad drive unless it's driving me crazy, of course. Uh, but so, and you had mentioned a little bit about sort of how exhausting that can be, et cetera, and even how a spiritual path can be another channel for being the best and just pumping forward and so which is really great to notice. So I wondered if you'd say a little bit about that, kind of how you notice that passion to be the best at so many things and how it just seems to arise, and then the next thing you know you're doing it, and then you're tired, and it's almost like, oh, how do I get off this treadmill? This is like it's a powerful mover, that personality pattern, and how do I use it rather than it use me? So yeah, just maybe just start with like, what's it? How do you notice that thing about so like an inner critic that says you got to be the best. If you're not the best, failure. Don't disappoint me. And then the other side going, you're better than everyone on the planet. They just haven't noticed it yet, right? I mean, like so. Anyway, what occurs to you? What have you experienced around that drive to be the best, and then the tiredness from it, and what's true for you?
Well, yeah, this point you brought up around spiritual performance, which is a, yeah. When I learned about the type 3 and I started getting involved in inner work, then I applied myself quite like a 3 to my inner work. I had,
Mhm.
20 minutes meditation a day, then I was stretching, then I did yoga, and then I had my journaling practice, and I had at a certain point there was like 3 hours a day of stuff I was doing, and you know,
Uh-huh.
um, and it was, and I was rigorous about it, and it was, and I suppose internally there was, this is the tricky thing, is that there is a sincerity in it. At least at that point for me there was a real, like, I wanted out of this 3 thing. I wanted out of this
Mhm.
this constant, need to prove my worth to myself and other people.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I thought that, by doing all this 3 hours of practices, that um, I could arrive at a place,
Mhm.
having put in the work, of escaping it. I would reach escape velocity and then leave the free planet, and that hasn't happened. And um, yeah, and it is funny, the seesaw of wanting to be the best. So this being wanting to be the best at stuff. I want to unpack that for a second and how that lives in me, because
Awesome.
um, yeah. So the Olympics are happening right now, and I'm in a cabin in the woods, and I'm not really tuning in that much, but I watched a few YouTube videos, um, and a few things happened. I watched the video of what's Sha'Carri Richardson is her name, I think, or
Mhm.
Richard, yeah, who's amazing. I watched a video of her qualifying for the Olympic team, and uh, she wins the race, and then she goes and hugs her mom in the stands, and there I am on the couch in this cabin in the woods watching this YouTube video, just absolutely bawling,
Oh.
because it's like, oh my god, like this, like, yes, like you did it, like it's so cool, and the sense of the glory and the radiance of the,
Mhm.
I find myself attuning to that and in my life, like the magnificence of things, and it touches me, when someone really,
Yeah, they get it. Yeah.
it touches me.
Yeah.
Like any moment in the movie when, when he kisses her, or like when there's that triumph, he's worked really hard and he does it, or, she really, those get me.
Mhm.
And then another thing happened so watching Sha'Carri Richardson, I also had the thought, I'll never be an Olympian. I'll never be the best in the world at something. And that thought sent me into, for about 5 minutes, a kind of, horrible little spiral. And then, yeah. And then I, picked myself back up and walked around and, I don't know, did whatever, had dinner, I guess. And the, how it operates in a more day-to-day way too is like the best thing. It's just like if there's something I care about and there's someone that's better at it than me, on the one hand there's admiration, on the other hand there's a kind of grief that comes up. It's like, yeah, like I don't know, like I don't actually know if I have the even if I worked 6 hours a day, like would I be as good a piano player as that person, or and as skillful, or even, and it's not even necessarily skill, it's like, if I really tuned in for 4 hours a day, could I really bleed onto the page in as poetic a way as this other person who wrote these beautiful songs.
Like you'll notice, like sounds like your heart kind of drops a little bit, like it's like almost like a sad moan of I'll never get that, or maybe I'll never be that, and so it sounds like it triggers you, and then you come back and go, wait a second, here I am. So say more about that kind of sort of admiring, and then it's almost like I don't know if it's an inner critic message where the inner critic goes, oh yeah, that's really extraordinary, and sadly you won't be that. I mean, does it seem like an inner critic thing, or is it what's your experience with it?
Yeah, I suppose it could be. Yeah, we could call it that. It's yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think that there is I think that deep wish to sort of shine at what you're here to shine on, and shine within yourself, is a very real wish. It's not just neurotic. It's the sense of landing in the depth of yourself, where you radiate your being through some expression, and landing in it and knowing it is, in my experience, is a part of my soul's path. And to the extent that I'm landing in it, I don't feel that sorrow, that admiration sorrow thing with other people. And I remember one Gurdjieff teacher said, when you land in the depth of your essence, you will know your purpose, and all of your comparisons to other people will disappear, because you'll be in the knowing of why you're here, and what your true gift is. So, I think that threes, and have a sense of that on some level, and then are, trying to find, like, what's the doorway here? What is the authentic, true union with my gifts and my soul? So I guess I'm saying that just from a standpoint that maybe even that sadness afterwards is just something around a truth that, yeah, there's something deep I want, and I haven't got to it yet. So anyway, it's just my speculation.
Yeah, no, and actually, it's as beautiful as you described that. It kind of filled me up. It's like this sense of, yeah. I mean, I don't want to just be lugubrious about the whole thing. It's like, there's a first of all, yes, there's a profound and just very juicy yearning to live at home in this shining essence thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to be my most radiant self. And I think maybe this is the four in me, I don't know, but there's a sense of where it gets sad for me is when I think to myself, well, why can't I be there all the time? Why can't I just live, this point that you made, Gurdjieff says, whatever, once you've arrived there, that's how my free brain hears it. Once you've done the work and you arrive, then you are in a state of eternal bliss, radiating your shining essence all the time. And
well, Gurdjieff would say, and now it gets harder. Now you're aware and you can go there, but then there's still stuff to navigate that, if you do any of the reading he has done, writing he's done, or Bennett, they'll just say, the farther you go and the more your heart opens, the more you face even more difficult things. So you need to have people with you.
It's been my experience. It makes me wonder why I do it at all. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, and it's amazing. I mean, what is it that calls me to keep doing this? Because it hurts a lot of the time. And
say that last sentence again. I lost you for a second.
I am fascinated by this inner earth that seems stronger than every other, which is to keep doing this work, even though it has a lot of pain associated with it. There's an ego death around every corner, and as soon as you think you've arrived somewhere, that's like that's the zenith, and then you're about to
go down again.
And that's exhausting. It's but I guess I've decided, or something in me has decided for me that this is the ride I'm on, and I'm strapped in and I'm not getting off. So this is.
Well, I think what's helped me is being around a lot of people who are farther along than myself, and just being cheered up by the fact that they say, this is how the journey is: 4 steps forward, 3 steps down, 4 steps forward. And part of it, like my teacher would say, you're not going to get rid of your patterns. They are in your neural pathways, but you can learn to not identify with them so much, and also not beat yourself up when they reappear and seem as alive as ever. The more that, and relax into it, like, oh, there it is. I'm not a failure. This is just this is the territory. And I'll have a serious talk with the higher powers if I arrive there and say, you got to change the rules of the game, because this is kind of messed up. Like, come on, this is too hard. So
I think that this is a really interesting whole topic. So my moment-to-moment experience of being on this roller coaster that we've been describing is, I oscillate between moods of, as you sort of like, I'm on top of the world, I'm a shining 3, I love myself, I'm, I love everything about life and my friends, and then, oh God, I'm, not living up to, there are people who are more successful than me and whatever. And that's the seesaw. And it's sort of always the seesaw. I guess you could sort of track progress in my inner life in terms of the amplitude of those oscillations. Like maybe they're a little smaller now than they used to be. I would say certainly they are, actually.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a because before we just descend into sort of the pointlessness of the whole thing, it's like the point to me, and this is where I feel very grateful is, and just to talk about some of the things that have happened in my life as a result of all the inner work is my relationships with my siblings are better than ever.
Awesome.
I'm it's amazing the quality and the level of depth of my relationships with people I care about are is just so much better. It's just it's crazy. I mean, that's and I wouldn't give that up. I wouldn't give that up for anything. That's been a huge win. And something too, I think, is just this constant sense of homecoming. Like I'm so much more aware now of when I've left myself and what I need to come back, and I think my center of gravity, or actually is that the right phrase? I'm not sure that's the right phrase, but it's like my central organizing principle of life at this point is doing what nourishes my organism in a way that makes me feel like me, and not some projection that I'm trying to project, or like some, I guess it's like self-remembering is a good way to put it. It's like, and here I am in the cabin in the woods for 3 months away from everyone else so that I can tune out and tune in here. And I wouldn't have had that impulse if it weren't for all the work I've done, I think. So that's useful too.
Yeah, so it sounds like, if I hear you correctly, there's like sort of a inner conversation around I should be farther along. I shouldn't be, again, just tell me what's true for you, but it's almost like, and I've heard you say this, that there's like a sense of, if I was doing this right, I'd be farther up the road, and I notice when I'm not there, and then I feel bad about it, and it can be over anything and any moment, but a sense of almost like an idealized standard, like if I was, the spiritual standards, if I was just present, I'd be that way all the time. And that's when my teacher laughs and said, if you get that, 5% of your day, you're having an awesome day. He says, most of the time we're on remote control. That's okay. When you wake up, try to use the time well. And, you can't make yourself stay awake. There's a wave pattern that goes through, and you do your practices so that you're more awake more often. But, there's a tidal stream that comes through, and the healthier you are, the less damage you do when you're asleep. But, notice when you wake up and be grateful for that. And I can notice that today. I'll just suddenly I'll go, oh, I'm here, I'm present. Oh, this is good. This is good. Now, where was I 5 minutes ago? I don't know. I was chewing on something. But so I wonder for you, and I know I can go to 3. I'm a 4, tend to go to 5, but I've got that 3 wing where, my spiritual inner critic says, man, on your gravestone, it will say, he failed at waking up. He was always 20 years behind where he should be. And, it's just sort of like, and then the violins come out, and there's the sad wailing from the crowd that I didn't get to my idealized place. But do you have something like that you notice? Just guessing.
Yeah, I've got violins in my life. And I've got a pretty big 4 wing. I have more violins in my life than I let on to. Maybe this is maybe 3 dominants, but it's I don't tend to foreground all my violins in my day-to-day life, or with I hear it in this conversation. I seem to be all violin all over the place, but which is it's fine. yeah, there are violins in my life. And I think that the sense of, yeah, further along that you're bringing up is a is a big theme, whether it's in whatever dimension of life that I'm caring about at the moment, whether it's spiritual or, here's another thing, by the way, just part of the agony and the ecstasy of being free is it turns out that having gone to Princeton, um like so many of my very, very close friends from college are, like so successful, like crazy like and even by Princeton, honestly, even by Princeton standard, it just was a weird sort of consortium of
Yeah.
people who turned out to be very successful in a traditional entrepreneurial startup world kind of way.
Yeah.
And so I find myself sometimes the violins, will play when I find myself hanging out with them. Because here I am, having been a piano player and made certain choices in my life, and now I'm coaching people, and I care about this sort of. When you do inner work, you don't get external accolades. You don't, and then the very notion of wanting them becomes the thing that you do the work on. And so it's like,
it seems like a trap.
It is a bit of a trap. And I wonder if this is funny too, because I know of all the sort of the major Enneagram teachers in that Enneagram teaching landscape, none of them are threes, at least out threes. I don't, maybe some are mistyped, I'm not sure, but and it makes sense to me that none of them, because it's just like first of all, to be a really good Enneagram teacher, you got to be really comfortable talking about your shadow. And I think that there's no type more than 3, maybe 2 gives a run for the money, but that is less likely to divulge the, yep, I did this, and this is a shitty thing about me, and here's this ugly thing, and and this is, and anyway, I've lost my train of thought. What are we talking about?
Well, let's see. I lost the train of thought too. I was so engrossed in your story, which was awesome.
Oh, we were talking about further along. Should be further along.
Yes, that there's always a sense of could have been better, or if I did it right, I would be. And so then you got your friends at Princeton, and in one frame they're shooting down the road. They might be suicidal and not telling you, but they have this one, and maybe not passionate about inner work, but nonetheless, they've got the hallmarks of success, right? They're wildly successful. Yeah. Sounds like they're good people, and so yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so to finish that thought, so first of all, when the violins start playing, the the voice of maybe Leonard Cohen is coming on and saying things like, and you should be a more successful Enneagram teacher by this point. You should be or you should have started a company that changes the world and introduces inner work to this dimension. And you should have been a more successful musician. You should have written 3 albums by now. You should be on stage. You should be playing stadiums. And that's the nature of the violin inner critic monologue. Yeah, that's all there. And then in moments of presence, it may be there, but I'm also abiding in a sense of I love myself and all that's good. Yeah.
And they don't. We're not taught that kind of presence is sort of the crown jewel of being a human being. That's like although Eckhart Tolle would certainly say presence is very precious. I can remember talking with Russ Hudson about the Enneagram. He said, well, the truth is only 1 in 10,000 people is even interested in it. So that's just the state of the world. So anyway, you were going to say something. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Well, I have this is really, I'm glad that I'm sensing my way to this point, because it's something that I've wanted to articulate. It's been in me, but I've needed to articulate it, and I haven't yet. Mm-hmm. It feels like there is a kind of inner gridlock between these two standards of performance that are embedded in an inner critic kind of way in my head. One is the traditional performance of the world in which I grew up, whether it's being a successful rock star or an entrepreneur or a student or write 3 books or whatever, you know, be a Tony Robbins of the Enneagram, whatever it is, you know, that's like those are my 3 grandiose fantasies of being successful.
Yeah.
And they're alive. You know, it's like, they live in me. There's also the spiritualized inner critic version of that, which is, well, by wanting all of that, you're not being a good 3, and you're not being a successful 3, you're not being a successful spiritual person. And in order to be a coach and an Enneagram teacher, then you need to have that sort of under lock. And so you need to get yourself on the mat. You need to make sure you're eating right, you're working out, you're meditating, you're journaling, you're doing our spiritual practices, which doesn't leave any time to be successful in the other realms, because all this, you know, and time is a big deal. Time is a big deal for 3s. You know, how am I spending my time? And,
yeah, well, that's a tough one to navigate.
And so that, I would say, that could be one way to frame the exact place I'm in right now in my life as a framing, like just the whole, that thing, like, and then, you know, here I launched my coaching practice not too long, like couple years ago. It's going okay. I have some clients I love working with. I love my coaching work. And I love doing the Enneagram retreats that I do. And I seesaw back and forth between these 2 things. Like, well, if I really want to be a successful Enneagram teacher, what I would do is, you know, here's what I would do with my website, and here's the 10 people that I would call to navigate. Here's a podcast I would start. Here's the book I would write, and here's all the stuff. And then this other part of me that goes, whoa, well, that's just 3 narcissism.
So you get it cuts you off. Yeah, you get cut off.
And what you really need to do is just go meditate and then see. And then anyway, so I'm quite stuck right there, actually. Yeah. And I wonder what's going to happen. I really do. So that was another big, I think, reason why I came to the woods here, is because I want to just, as best I can, just sense, it's like I have this image of myself now that I'm working with as a plant. It's like, you know, previously it might have been like a racehorse or a gymnast at a meet or something like that, you know, some performer or an actor. But now it's like, all I know is that I'm this like little sapling, and I don't know what kind of tree it is or what kind of fruit it wants to bear. All I know is that it needs water and sunlight, and to read certain books that it likes, and to have time by itself to just like listen for the life force that wants to come through it, and just to spring forth into what it actually wants to become. And maybe that's like the third way, kind of law of 3 thing.
Well, I'd love to, I mean, that inner, you know, it sounds like it's sort of like your spiritual inner critic says, if you do those things the 3s do to promote themselves, then you're kind of failing at your spiritual work, right? You're being, right? So, oh, okay. So should I just like go out and have a bowl out there and have people, you know, come and give me money? I mean, but it's like it doesn't say, wow, you have some skills at promoting yourself. That's a wise thing to do, to be able to do your work, right? But instead it interrupts with, not spiritual, you need to meditate more. You shouldn't really want that kind of success. That's even a bad sign, right? So it's like it takes your 3 stuff, which are, you know, orientations, and then makes them like non-spiritual. So you go, well, I don't have anything to work with. What do I do here? What's, you know, I feel like either way I go, it's wrong. So does that capture some of the taste of it?
Yeah. Nailed it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I might just ask one last question, and then I want to do a follow-up conversation, but I can't do it today, just to talk with you, you know, about some of this stuff, because I think it's really interesting. But so, and this is a hard one. I don't like it when I get this question, but some people like it. Like, you know, You have any thoughts for, threes who are in the world and struggling with these patterns, things that you might suggest to them to help them become more aware, or what helped you? Anything that comes to mind as a sort of advice from a three who's been, working on themselves really hard for a number of years, 6 or 7 years, and just powering through. So anyway, anything you'd would want to offer to your beloved three ancestors out there?
Yeah, let me take a minute with that.
Yeah, take your time.
Oops. Um, yeah, I have a few things. The first is if you're a three who really cares about this, or who is sincere in wanting to make some kind of change. I think by far the most important thing is to get in a community that is radically non-judgmental, like very safe. And I think that one of the things that's misunderstood about threes a lot is that, there they are out in the world and shining and doing their three thing, but taking off the mask is and revealing. It's like that thing that is revealed through the mask. It's like it's not just whatever their true face. It's like it goes through to this like little, just so delicate, just this most sensitive, like heartstring, and to expose that is, it's so important, but to do that in a way that is self-honoring with people that that you can trust with it, and that may not be anybody that right now in your life, actually. And yeah, but doing, I don't know, workshop, I think live workshops are really good, or working with a coach or something like that. But yeah, just, or a really good therapist, somebody or a community that can be there to help support and strengthen the desire to continue to bring that inner thing out, and to be very patient. I mean, that's a three. I hate that word, but it's like, but it's like, just to be so, just so gentle with yourself, because, I think threes are really sensitive, and it's probably true of all types. I think the sensitivity of threes is largely overlooked in a lot of ways because, of the nature of their pattern. So that's the first one. And then the second thing is Yeah, I had a really like kind of gut punching in a really good way conversation with a therapist recently. My therapist, who I've worked with for almost like 2 decades, crazy. I'm so lucky. I had this genius, amazing, like mind-blowingly good therapist. He's amazing.
Awesome.
And I was telling him about, the next, I don't know, a situation in which my threeness was showing itself. He's actually not even an Enneagram person, but he's an amazing therapist. And it was just another new, fresh life situation in which my threeness was presenting itself, and I just was like, you know what, I'm just fucking sick of it. I'm just so done. I'm just so done with this. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I don't want this anymore. I don't. And it's gone on too long. And he goes, yeah, you might be right. Are you ready to accept yourself? And there was just something perfect about the way he said it, the timing of it, just like landed. And so I've been working with self-acceptance and this whole thing around this this whole thing about being three. It's like it's always about who I'm becoming, who I'm gonna be when I blank, when I meditate, when I publish my book, when I do this next thing. Once I fix the fence on once I do this thing, then I will have arrived.
Yes.
And never being with this person right here, right now in this chair.
Yeah.
And so that's like a new, fresh way I've been working with presence and the word self-acceptance and meeting myself right now where I really am, as opposed to trying to build the bridge between where I am now and where I would like to be. Just meeting myself here now and then wanting and then sensing what is life forward for me from this.
Awesome.
So
good stuff, really good stuff. One of the things that my teacher will say is to say something like, Naylor, you keep trying to get rid of your patterns. They're not going away. You didn't create them either. You don't even have to beat yourself up for them. They're just they just operate. But you can learn to notice them, sort of like unruly children that break out into the street from time to time, and kind of bring them back in and go, oh, the kids are crazy today, and be kind to them, and as opposed to whipping yourself. And I find it so. One of the things I love about Pema Chodron is she's always talking about these patterns they're automatic. They come through, and part of the work is can I notice them and not be so offended by them or think I'm wrong or I'm being the bad for, or maybe I just notice, oh, I'm in that kind of melancholy place. I'm having feelings of melancholy. I sort of feel like I want to build a small cathedral to it. Isn't that interesting? And I might even want to grieve there. I don't know. I've done it 1,000 times. It doesn't bring me anything, but I noticed there's the pattern, right? And I sort of look around, see if anybody notices this is the most awesome grief-stricken cathedral ever made. This is like, and going, what a funny character that pops up inside, right? So, but that takes time, and I think it's just right on, really spot on. So thanks for sharing that. And we all have our own cathedrals that we like to worship at. So, well, look, I'm going to stop the recording unless you have a final thing you want to say. And
I'm just sensing if there is. Yeah, I'll say one other thing. I find that I work with a lot of threes in my coaching. Yeah.
Mm.
And it's kind of awesome. It's like I love working with threes. And I mean, there's just obviously there's just a kind of kinship that forms very quickly. And
Awesome.
yeah, one of the things that I've found is really beautiful about working with threes is just like the yeah, generally like the radiance is coming through in some way, right? It's like always there. It's like just there is a shine, you know. It's like and I love it. So I love being a witness to it. I love that. And I think just the thing about, you know, for me, what I love about being three is is just how much the seeing the light in other people really lights me up. And yeah, sometimes there's that like Sha'Carri Richardson, that Olympic thing, you know, there is that, but I mean, it's worth it still. It's like the sense of just bearing witness to. There's so many moments of magnificence always, and yeah, just like being a witness to the coolness of the people, and to that in myself too is really precious.
Awesome.
And I think something about the word courage that's also like, I don't know, meditating on how courage is what allows me to rest in seeing that without I don't know, needing to do anything with it or something like that.
Is that, do I hear the sound of a train?
There's a train. Yeah.
It's wailing to you.
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you so much. Really appreciate your sharing and articulation of that, the inner things you go through. Very, you know, if there's anything missing in the literature, it's stories like this. You know, these are very, very important stories about your personal navigation of these patterns. And so I'm really grateful. And, you know, if you decide when you watch it that like, oh no, I got to do a redo, or, you know, whatever, you let me know, we'll redo it. Or if you just decide, I just can't bear to have myself out there like this, just let me know and we'll throw it off into, you know, through a black hole, and you won't have to worry about that. So, but just thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you and your honesty and just great, sincere sharing. So I'm going to,
Thank you, Michael.
yeah, thank you.